Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for participating and logging in tonight, this evening's public meeting regarding the Oakland Harbor Turning Basins Widening re-release of the draft report. You're joined here tonight with members from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers team and the Port of Oakland. We will start the meeting shortly as soon as we have our critical mass. Thank you so much. We will start in just a brief moment. For those already logged in, please note that this meeting is being recorded. Thank you all again. For those of you who have joined us today, my name is Laura Ariola with the Port of Oakland, letting you know that you have logged in on the Zoom meeting for the Oakland Harbor Turning Basins Widening re-release draft report. We will begin the meeting in just a moment. Thank you for waiting. Okay, thank you all. We have about 45 members of the public who have Zoomed on. My name is Laura Ariola. Thank you for joining. For those of you just plugging in, you've joined the public meeting regarding the Oakland Harbor Turning Basins Widening re-release draft report. You're joined here tonight with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Port of Oakland. And I'm here to let my colleague know, Erica Powell, that we have, again, about 45 people who have Zoomed in on the meeting, and now is a good time to commence.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. So good evening, everyone. This is, we really appreciate you joining us this evening. We know that there's a lot of competing responsibilities at home with family and work and other things. So we really appreciate you being here today. This is like I said, a listening session for the Oakland Harbor Turning Basins Widening Feasibility Study. My name is Erica Powell, and I am with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I am the project manager for the study for the project delivery team. We also have several members from the Port of Oakland. In the Maritime Division, we have the Maritime Director, Brian Brandeis, Jason Garbin, and Justin Tashik. In Social Responsibility Division, we have Amy Tharp, Laura Ariola, Luana Espana. Luana is actually our technical lead, and if you have any issues or if you know of anyone that's having issues, please let us know through the chat box, and we will make sure that she can help them. And then in the environmental programs and planning, we have Colleen Liang and Kamli Shoa. On the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers side, we have several members here that are helping, both from the planning and the environmental team. We have Dr. Tessa Beach, who's our planning chief, and we have Jessica McCaffrey, Eric Jolliffe, Ellie Covington, Jamie Yin, and Erin Maloney. So we really appreciate having all the team members here. Before we begin, I'd like to go over the meeting format. Today we are using a Zoom webinar, and we have closed captioning available. So to enable this feature, click Live Transcript, then select Show Subtitle. If you would like to view the full transcript of the meeting in the side panel, click View Full Transcript. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. So the meeting will begin with a presentation, and then it will be followed by a public comment session. We'll be using the chat and raise hand features during the public comment session, and we'll go over how to use those when we get to that point. So no need to worry about that now. We will give you instructions more than once to make sure that you're able to use it. All right, next slide, please. So here's our agenda. The main purpose for tonight's meeting is to provide revisions on the report, to provide highlights, as well as show you where the report, the responses to comments from the first draft are, and then we'll have a Q&A session, as well as how to submit comments in writing, because it's very important that you submit your comments in writing. So before we move forward with that, though, I'd like to introduce Maritime Director Brian Brandeis, and then we'll be introducing Dr. Tessa Beach for some opening remarks. Brian, would you mind?
Yes, thank you so much, Erica. Again, Brian Brandeis, the Director of Maritime for the Port of Oakland. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us. I've served as the Director of Maritime for 3 years. Prior to joining the port, I served as an executive with one of the world's largest ocean carriers. And I'm very encouraged with the attendance tonight, and very appreciative of everyone's continued collaboration on this very important study. Since joining the port, I've had the pleasure to be part of a team that has and continues to work through challenges to deliver a cleaner and more efficient future. Not only did the pandemic rebrand supply chain as a household term, it has also taught us here at the port that we need to be ready for the future before the future arrives. This is exactly what we are working on and towards today. Thank you again for spending your valuable time with us here tonight and for being part of the port's tomorrow. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Brian. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Tessa Beach. She is our planning chief. Tessa, if you're ready.
Thanks, Erica, and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Tessa Beach. I am the Chief of Planning and the Environmental Branch Chief for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers San Francisco District. As Erica stated, on behalf of the district, I really want to extend our gratitude to you all for your time this evening and your continued engagement on this important study. Our district, in partnership with the Port of Oakland as a non-federal sponsor, has been studying potential improvements to address vessel transit inefficiencies at the port. And as you should all be aware, on April 26th, we re-released a second draft of our integrated feasibility report and environmental assessment. Your input and comments on this study are really important to us, and we look forward to hearing from you this evening. In that vein, I do want to recognize that this afternoon we received the same letter from numerous individuals requesting 3 primary things: the addition of 60 days to the comment period, an added public meeting during the comment period, and the preparation of an environmental impact statement, or EIS. With the recent receipt of these requests, we are evaluating them and will respond accordingly. However, I would like to acknowledge that with consideration of the impact avoidance and reduction measures proposed under the various alternatives and their anticipated environmental benefits, we have not identified the need to prepare an EIS. Thank you again for your time this evening. And now I'll turn it back over to Erica to proceed with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Tessa. So now I'd like to hand it over to our lead planner. Her name is Jessica McCaffrey. And Jessica's going to go through the slide deck to provide some information and clarification. I'd like to suggest that at the end of the presentation, we will have a short period where folks can ask for clarification just on the PowerPoint presentation. And then after that, we will move into a question and answer session. Okay, so Jessica, will you take over?
Great, thanks. All right, we'll move to the next slide. So as we mentioned, this is a listening session this is for the re-release of our draft report that we initially released back in 2021. We are committed to public engagement. We've held a number of public engagement meetings since the initiation of the study. This included working team meetings with interagency groups, groups that are focused on neighborhood-specific interests, like the Oakland, Acorn, and Prescott neighborhood councils, and other stakeholder engagement meetings. In that spirit, we are interested in public comment. On the next slide, we have information about how to have your comment included in the public record. We can move to the next slide. Our comment period currently does close 12 June. You can use the QR codes shown to find where you can make your comment to have it included in the official record. We are asking that you go ahead and submit them in writing, and you can do so at the links provided using the QR code. The email here, Oakland Harbor Turning Basin Study at usace.army.mil, or you can mail it directly to Eric Jolliffe at the address provided. Again, all of this is provided on the website. This presentation will be uploaded to the website after this meeting. So that's all available. At the end of the meeting, we do have some information about how to access a hard copy if you don't have access to the website. Next slide, please. As we mentioned, this is a re-release of our draft integrated feasibility report and environmental assessment that we released initially back in 2021. After the initial release of the draft report, we did refine the plan identified in the report. This shifted the footprints for the inner and outer harbor turning basins, and that led to us identifying some required in-water work and pile driving that wasn't discussed in the initial draft report. As such, we determined we needed to re-release, and this allows the public an opportunity to comment on the changes. We did make a number of edits to the draft report. These are summarized within the report in the executive summary on page 6. The most notable changes are an added greenhouse gas analysis, a draft risk assessment, a separate cumulative impact section, and a discussion of the potential for induced growth. Additionally, we have a summary of economic and navigation changes affecting the summary, new groundwater conditions at Howard Terminal, and a number of other items that were just kind of updates and needed to reflect this shift. And again, these are summarized within the report on page 6. We can go to the next slide. The study area in the report, or in the study rather, is unchanged from the initial report. Our study looked at navigational challenges in Oakland Harbor. Oakland Harbor is a federal channel maintained by the Corps of Engineers. This Oakland Seaport is shown here in red. The north is Interstate 80, which is also the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge. To the east is Interstate 880. To the east of the interstate is the communities of West Oakland. And to the south, the Inner Harbor Channel serves as boundary between the neighboring Alameda community and the port. A large portion of the containers serviced at the port are actually exports. The port is mostly a second or last port of call. What this means is that vessels visiting Oakland are coming after they've visited other ports on the West Coast. And then these vessels depart for foreign markets. As such, the port is largely serving an exports market. So only a small percentage of containers on any given vessel are actually handled at the port. For example, back in 2022, fewer than 2,000 containers on average were handled from a vessel visiting, as depicted on the following slide. Next slide. So our existing turning basins were constructed in the early 2000s. They were designed based on the dimensions of ships that were much more common at the time, so they were designed to accommodate a vessel approximately 1,100 feet in length. Over the past 2 decades, we have seen an increasing number of larger vessels with much larger capacity. And they're becoming a larger portion of the overall worldwide fleet of ships. So with that in mind, like, we have a growing number of vessels that are approximately 1,300 feet in length. These larger ships are facing some inefficiencies when they enter into, so like, while they're more efficient for transporting goods, like they have larger capacity, fewer ships are required to ship the same number of containers. When they get to port, they face additional restrictions. So we'll discuss that on the next slide. With fewer vessels moving, an increased number of containers annually, the ships do spend a little bit more time at berth, but once they've docked, they have like plugged into power, so they're not having the like diesel emissions that a ship would have once they're docked. This additional time is required because there are a fixed number of cranes to move any given number of containers. But overall, as you can see, kind of like in the far right-hand column, our overall number of vessel visits are actually reduced from when we initially constructed the project back in the early 2000s. The next slide. So in order to safely navigate the channel, these longer vessels, the larger vessels, do have restricted operations. This limits when the vessels can enter and exit the harbor and how they dock. Additionally, they also require additional pilots to guide the ship. This results in delays and idling, not just for the larger vessels, but also smaller vessels that are impacted by like essentially having to wait while these other vessels navigate the channel. Next slide. So like we mentioned before, the re-release was required after we shifted the proposed footprints for the turning basin. The shift can be seen here with the proposed footprint for the outer harbor in blue and the previous proposed footprint in green. For the inner harbor, the proposed footprint is highlighted in red and the previous footprint is shown in purple. So they're relatively very similar. There's just, for the case of the inner harbor, harbor, we did identify some additional in-water work. Next slide. So our draft recommended plan calls for widening of both the inner and outer harbor to accommodate larger vessels. The plan incorporates the use of electric dredges and will place approximately 2 million cubic yards of sediment at beneficial use sites. The material that is placed with beneficial use will contribute to an estimated 279 acres of wetlands. If you need an idea of what size that is, it's approximately the size of a little bit more than 200 football fields, or approximately 1/7 of the area of the Port of Oakland. We do expect construction to last about 3 years, starting 2027 and running through 2029. Next slide, please. So the recommended plan has incorporated a number of best management practices to reduce the overall impacts of the project on the surrounding communities. Specifically, we've heard concerns about noise, air quality, and dust. So these best management practices specifically address that. We've included the use of electric dredges to avoid construction-related emissions that would impact the air quality of the West Oakland community. The use of electric dredges is considered a betterment, and the additional cost associated with the dredging for electric dredges will be paid by the Port of Oakland. We've also incorporated best practices to minimize dust and noise. Our plan for beneficial reuse of dredged material will contribute to wetland restoration with associated benefits. Specifically, there's some sea level rise resiliency that's provided by wetlands, as well as carbon capture. Additionally, we have identified transport routes to try to minimize the overall impact to surrounding communities. Next slide, please. As far as project schedule, we are currently in the study phase of the project. After receipt of comments and responding to public comments, we expect to finalize the report in early 2024. We anticipate congressional approval of the project in a 2024 Water Resources Development Act. Assuming this 2024 approval, we anticipate our design and pre-construction work to take a couple of years, followed by anticipated construction start in 2027, continuing through 2029. Again, this is all contingent on congressional approval. Next slide. As we mentioned, our draft study is available online, and the link is included up top. However, if for whatever reason you can't access online, or you would prefer to review a hard copy, we have hard copies available through local libraries that are listed here. There's also a copy available at the port's headquarter office with addresses here. That is our basic overview of where we are with the re-release of this draft report. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Erica for comment or questions.
Thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate that. I was just wanted to suggest that if you have questions or you need clarification on the PowerPoint deck, please submit that into the chat box, and we will clarify any of the slides that you saw. And if that's not, we don't get any comments on the PowerPoint, then we'll go ahead and move forward to the comment session. Laura or Ellie, do we have any comments regarding the presentation?
Thank you for that. Hi there. Let's see. Right now, in the chat box, we currently have, we don't have anybody yet who has a question, although we did have our guest, with Susan Ransom, asking if there is a comment period or just Q&A.
Yes, there is a comment session coming up, so we can go ahead and move forward with that. Or questions, I should say, questions about the presentation. If there are none, then we will move towards questions about the study or comments that you'd like to make. And the way we will do that, as indicated earlier, if you put your name in the chat box and you say you would like to ask a question, then Laura will monitor the order in which those comments are received or in which the hands are raised. And we'll do one group first, and then we'll do the other.
Okay, great.
And I'm counting on Laura to keep us.
Okay, definitely. So thank you again. So what we'll do is take the queue of hands first, followed by the questions in the chat. We'll take them in the order as we see them. Right now, I have one person with the raised hand. That is Ms. Fern. Ms. Fern, I've asked if you can kindly unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm Fern with the Environmental Defense Fund. A question about one of the changes in the re-release report. Does the new greenhouse gases analysis, does that include the assumption of expanded operations based on the widened basins or even like increased TEU, or is it only to do with the construction phase? Thank you.
Sorry, Erica, you are on mute.
Sorry, thank you for your question. One thing I wanted to thank you, Ms. Fern. I did want to emphasize the most important thing that we can ask of you today is to submit your comments in writing as well to the information that was provided so that it becomes an official comment. Although it's being recorded today, we really emphasize that you submit your comment in writing. It's really, really important so that it becomes part of the record, the official record. Okay.
Just to loop back to Fern, right now she has asked a question, not a comment.
Yes, so we can answer that. Either Eric or Tessa, if you could raise your hand, please.
This is Eric Jolliffe. The greenhouse gas emissions does include both operations and construction, as I understand, but it doesn't assume expanded TEU. The projection is that the expansion of these turning basins on their own isn't going to increase throughput through the port. Somebody else may want to clarify that in more detail than I can.
Okay, thank you. I can submit further questions, I guess, but my understanding based on the previous report was that it would lead to increased TEUs. I may be mistaken.
Yeah, that is not an assumption that we have made. It's we've assumed that port growth is independent of these turning basins.
I'm wondering if Justin from the port can respond. We did do an analysis within the report discussing the potential for inducing growth. We did conclude that we wouldn't be, but I think Justin can speak a little bit more directly to that.
Hi, all. Let me mute myself, get my video on. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. Justin Tashik, project manager in Maritime with the Port of Oakland. We are the non-federal sponsor for the study with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, if that wasn't clear. So it is a partnership between the Corps and the Port of Oakland. I would share specifically the technical experts that did the analyses, specifically greenhouse gas in particular, are not with us today. I would just respect all here to take down the questions so that we can speak with the experts that did do those analyses, so we can correctly inform the group here what was included, what was not, because the greenhouse gas analysis was a new addition with this revised draft. Thank you.
And Fern, one other thing, we have, if you look in the revised report in the appendices, we have developed some responses to previous comments, and that was a very common comment actually that a lot of people made. And we have developed a master response to that. I think it's one of the first comments responded to in the appendices.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all. This is Laura here, going back to the queue. I don't see any more raised of hands, but I do see in our chat a question from, I believe it's Mr. James Van. And in it, I'll read it and someone can answer. The length of the newer vessels appear to exceed the space available for the turning. Is there a problem? Question from Mr. James Van. So let's see, who do we point to here who can answer the question?
I would ask for clarification
Okay.
from Mr. James.
Okay, Mr. Van, I will ask you to unmute yourself in just a second, as soon as I find you here. Here we go.
Mr. Van, if you'd like to maybe clarify your question a little bit. And it's okay to clarify in the chat box as well.
Not sure if he can hear us.
Right.
Let's see.
Okay, so we'll just go ahead and table that comment for now, so we can, until we get clarification.
Okay, we can go back to his question.
Yes.
I'll test to see if his microphones are working.
And the next person that we have?
Yeah, then we have, we realize people are ready to get in the queue for the comments, the comment portion of this. So thank you for waiting and bearing with us for the Q&A. So just a reminder, right now we are taking questions for any of the materials presented to you thus far. And if you do have a question, please raise your hand.
I think they're ready to move on.
Okay, one more, sorry about that. I do have a follow-up question from Marie Logan. Marie Logan, if you can kindly unmute yourself. Let's see.
Okay.
Hi there, can you hear me now?
Yes, Ms. Logan, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Fern's question about the assumptions about operations. I heard Mr. Jolliffe mention that there is not an assumption about expanded TEU here. And I heard him say that the projection is that the expansion of the basins will not increase cargo throughput. And then I also heard him say that port growth is independent. And I was confused by that because I do see projections in the EA that the port will continue to grow and that it will see an increase in TEUs. And so I was trying to figure out how those can be reconciled. And if you could talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Erica, I don't know if you want to take this one, but I would point again to the port, or maybe Eric to talk a little bit about the potential for induced growth.
Yeah.
So
Well-
our project is specifically responding to an existing issue. These ships are already using the turning basins. They are having operational inefficiencies specifically because they exceed the turning basins. So they're already visiting the port. So expanding the turning basins allows them to operate more efficiently. It doesn't increase the number of vessels or the number of containers loading or offloading at the port.
And just in a nutshell, Marie, what the the throughput and TEUs coming through the port are going to be determined by demand in the market. And this is just a more efficient way of dealing with what comes through. It's not going to increase the throughput in itself.
Thank you.
That's just a biologist speaking. I'm not an economist, so I can't get into too many details for you.
And I was going to ask Laura or Luana if Andrew Basil is, I thought he joined. If he's available, he'd also be a good person to respond to that. He's our lead economist.
We will look to see for Andrew Basil, you said?
Yes.
I don't believe Andrew was able to join.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Ms. Logan, for your question regarding clarification of that information. So, and I think we have a better, pretty well-defined response in the report. So hopefully you're able to see that. Do we have any more clarifications on the PowerPoint presentation, or can we move to the?
We don't have any more, just to confirm, and if I could, I believe Ms. Susan Ransom is waiting for the comment portion.
Okay.
In which case, thank you, Susan, for waiting. Oh, she has her hand up, so nope, let me. Hi, Susan, could you unmute yourself?
I did. So are we
Thank
in comment session? And I'm number one, so don't start.
You are,
Oh.
Susan.
Okay. So thank you so much. This is Susan Ransom with SSA Terminal. First, I'd like to say how much we as an industry appreciate the Army Corps and the Port of Oakland for their commitment to the Turning Basin project. This project is essential for the economic growth of the port. And I know we've talked a lot about growth, but the Turning Basin project in itself is for more efficiency. But, you know, years to come, obviously we want the port to grow some. I mean, that's what we do. But for the better ship efficiency moving in and out of the harbors, for all the environmentalists on this call, widening the Turning Basin will not only help expedite the current ships faster, but will encourage the bigger, more fuel efficient ships to come to Oakland. This will in turn lessen the amount of ship traffic with smaller ships being redeployed or taken out of commission. The trucks hauling the goods, which is also a concern, are also compliant environmentally and soon moving towards a future of electric trucks. We continue to work with the port closely to meet the needs of the environmental industry. This turning basin project is a win for the environment and a win for the port. My last comment, second, for the port people on here, with regards to maritime reservation land under the A's current term agreement, which is set to expire on the 13th, we will respectfully ask that any further negotiations on alternate ideas or further talks with the A's regarding Howard Terminal exclude the maritime reservation land that is meant for the turning basin. At this time, there is zero reason this reserve land should be part of any negotiations. If the 10 acres is not entirely needed at the end of the project, then the port at that time can decide what to do with the remaining land. We know your support of the turning basin is strong, and your support of this request is truly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. So again, since we've entered the question and answer session, the comment session, we have a 2-minute, you saw that now on the screen, it popped up. We have a 2-minute limit for your comment. Want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. And so that's why we're trying to limit the amount of time. Okay, so can you give me the next 2 names, Ms. Laura?
Yeah, hi, Erica. That we have the next names is Mike Jacob and SW Lee. I'm going to ask Mike Jacob to unmute himself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can, perfectly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mike Jacob, I'm with Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, and we represent ocean carriers and terminal operators on the U.S. West Coast, including the Port of Oakland. And thank you to the Port and U.S. Army Corps for recirculating and opening this back up for public comment and discussion. As the Port staff and Army Corps staff mentioned, this is really an important project for a number of reasons. It helps facilitate safety on the water and expands the capacity of the port to handle vessels at all hours of the day, not just at night. I'm sorry, not just at day, but also at night. Would allow us to turn vessels with fewer tug assists, which also makes us more efficient, lowers costs, and reduces emissions. And then also reduces costs and emissions per unit. So obviously hearing earlier about concerns about reduced growth. Growth is a complicated factor, but with respect to an inducement, if you're a farmer and you're shipping something from the Central Valley to Asia, you don't say, I'm going to do that because there's an expanded turning basin. And that's why there's no inducement. That market exists and it will operate regardless of what's happening with the turning basin. The economic efficiencies for the turning basin occur within and totally internal to the ocean carrier. You'll deploy a larger ship, which means you've lowered costs per unit, you've lowered emissions per unit, and you've created more efficiency within the system. We want to facilitate the growth that we've already essentially planned for when we built our terminals out, gone through the CEQA process, and that's facilitated in a way which is obviously more environmentally, but also efficiently and economically beneficial. So we appreciate you guys going through this process. And then one more thing on greenhouse gases, and we'll be submitting this with our comments. But when you divert cargo, or when you have cargo going on smaller vessels, GHGs per unit and also total GHGs both increase. And that's not in our best interest or in the best interest of the environment. So thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Laura?
Yes, we have Mr. SW Lee in the queue. Can you kindly unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm the president of SW Logistics, a company here in Oakland that does freight forwarding and customs clearance. I'm also the representing here today Custom Brokers and Forwarders Association of Northern California. We wholeheartedly agree with Susan Ransom and Mike Taylor regarding the turning basin. It is absolutely necessary. All the ships that is being built now for the new fuel requirements for cleaner fuel that is into production is 10,000 TEUs and higher. And those will definitely require a larger turning basin here in Oakland.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. There's 45 feet.
We are also mindful of what's going on with the Oakland A's at Howard Terminal. We would like to also follow up and request that the Howard Terminal be put back into the control of Port of Oakland and for maritime use in the future. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for your comment.
Erica, next in the queue is Marie Logan and then Mr. Mel McKay. So Marie Logan next.
Ms. Logan?
Thank you very much. And thank you to Dr. Beach and the members of the Port of Oakland staff for making time to hear the community concerns about this project. My name is Marie Logan, and I'm an attorney with Earth Justice. There are 4 points I wanted to offer tonight. The first is about public engagement. We're disappointed that the Army Corps' outreach to the community has not been really adequate for this event. To my knowledge and understanding, the Corps did not consult with the West Oakland community at all in the past year between the release of the last environmental assessment and the present revised environmental assessment. Relatedly, this event has been hosted on Eventbrite, which in my experience anyways, required creation of an account, and that in itself dissuades public participation and makes it harder for members of the public to communicate their concerns. And so we have concerns that the Corps has not been adhering to the Biden administration's recently issued executive orders on environmental justice, like Order 14096, that requires consultation with fence line communities about projects that impact their community. So we wanted to reiterate our request for a 60-day extension of the comment period so that the community and interested members of the public can provide adequate review of the numerous documents that have been released already. My second point is about the scope of the project. It seems to be functionally unchanged from last year. We raised these concerns last year that the impact of an expansion on the basins will be felt throughout the landside community in the form of increased truck traffic, increased air pollution, and the scope of analysis in the report is drawn too narrowly to capture those impacts. The third point I'll make is that, again, this is an environmental justice issue. West Oakland is already disproportionately impacted by port activity, and residents deserve to be more closely considered in any plan that may exacerbate health harms related to air quality. And the final point I'll make is that this expansion project poses ecological risks too. There are risks to marine and coastal ecosystems, local wildlife. I have more to say, but I see I'm out of time. So I just wanted to conclude by noting that we are requesting that the Army Corps pursue a full environmental impact statement so that it can more thoroughly identify and analyze all of these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Logan, for your comment.
Next, we have in the queue Mel McKay and then Cameron Carr. We'll go with Mel McKay first. Could you kindly unmute yourself, Mr. Mel?
Thank you. I appreciate this. This turning basin is essential to the larger ships. In 2000, when the basin was assembled, it was for 5,000 to 8,000 TEUs per vessel. There was the smaller vessels. I'm a longshoreman. I've been on the water for over 30 years. Past president of ILWU Local 10. This is essential for the larger vessels. This is how we feed our families. If these larger vessels go to Southern California, San Pedro, or Long Beach, or either Pacific Northwest, Local 10, Oakland, California, will miss a lot of work. And this is what happened through the pandemic. They had to divert their vessels, right? Because of all the hoopla with the turning basin in the Oakland A's, the vessels decided to go elsewhere. And this turning basin is essential to our jobs. If these larger vessels have to go to Southern California or the north, we'll lose immensely. So I think it's very, very essential to this turning basin for the Army Corps of Engineers to do their study and continue with their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKay, for your comment. Ms. Laura, who do we have next?
Yeah, we have Cameron Carr. Can you kindly unmute yourself, Cameron?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm Cameron Carr, and I'm here on behalf of the Bay Planning Coalition. Our organization has a diverse membership of over 100 members who together support our mission of promoting the sustainability of the region's environment and economy. As we can see from the presentation tonight, the Turning Basin Project will further increase efficiency and enhance capabilities at the port, which is a key component to our region's success. Moreover, with improved navigational access for larger vessels, which already berth at the port, the widening of the harbor will allow for smoother operations to accommodate consumer demands. Ensuring our region continues to support the nation's economy and serve as a gateway to global markets. By optimizing operations, the project will support a greener future for our communities by reducing terminal congestion and minimizing emissions from stagnant vessels. In closing, I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to comment, and we look forward to supporting the progress of the Oakland Harbor Turning Basin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Next, we have William Dow. Could you kindly unmute yourself? Thank you.
Mr. William, we can't hear you. He looks like he's muted. Are you able to unmute him?
Yeah, we've he has himself muted. Mr. Dow, if you are on your phone, it looks like you are dialed in through the network. But if you're on your phone, you can unmute yourself.
Hello?
Here we go.
Did that work? Did that
Yeah.
work? Okay, you
Yeah.
gotta forgive me. I'm an old timer and I don't know how to work this thing. I'm William Dow, Local 6 ILW, retired, and am supporting the issue of the turn basin. The maritime industry is too important to this area to let it go by and let the shipping move to another port, and to remove Howard Terminal from put back on port designation. The A's aren't doing anything with it, and they're just playing games, and stop fooling around. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. Laura, I don't see any other names after Mr. Dow.
That's right. I don't have any more, and there aren't any more hands in the queue, and there aren't any
raised hands.
There aren't any raised hands in the queue. So now's the time for, in case anybody wants to provide an oral comment here. And while we do that, it doesn't look like there are any further comments in the chat box. We went through some of the questions, and I've heard from Marie Logan.
There is a hand raised now.
Oh, okay. And that is SW Lee. Okay, so I know Mr. SW Lee has commented in the past, or has already provided comment. If there's anybody we'd like to allow, in the interest of time and people's participation, if anybody else has a comment before we go back to folks who have already provided comment.
I think there's another person, Ron Cancia.
That's right. Looks like Ron might be having technical issues. But if you can, Ron, join us. I've asked for you to unmute yourself, or perhaps type something in the chat box for us to.
Yeah. We're happy to read your comment if you're able to type it into the chat box. Mr. Cancia just wrote in the chat box, I support the widening 100%. Close quote. Thank you very much, Mr. Ron. We appreciate your comment.
Okay. We have, again, Mr. Dow, who has, I don't see anybody else. Excuse me, here comes a train.
I don't see anyone else either.
Okay. Mr. Lee, can you kindly unmute yourself? You raised your hand to provide a comment.
Yes, I'm not sure if I am allowed to make a comment regarding the lady who had the environmental concerns, and I am not an expert in this in any sense of the word, but these new vessels that we're trying to accommodate with this wider turning basin are absolutely more fuel efficient and cleaner than what is coming in now. Having said that, as far as additional traffic is concerned, additional traffic under California law that is coming to affect trucks into the port, they will be all transitioning to electric or hydrogen or other alternative fuels coming into the port by the time this gets built. So I believe that those two, the cleaner ships and the cleaner trucks into the port, by the time this gets built, will absolutely be in line with California's clean air guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
We have next in the queue, Fern. Ms. Fern, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, yes, thank you. Just quickly in response to the previous comment, I acknowledge that with the advanced clean truck fleets coming into effect, that trucks will be cleaner, but it's not just about trucks, it's the vibrations and the noise that will continue to come through port adjacent neighborhoods. So that is something to be considered, even when there's the tailpipe emissions are reduced. And I just wonder, my comment relates to kind of even with the growth, the assumption of no induced growth, there is kind of over capacity at ports across the US. And I wonder to what extent that has been considered. EDF works with a number of ports, not just in California, and everyone is in competition, is looking to widen the basins to accommodate these larger ships. And I just wonder to what extent those economics beyond California or beyond the port, Oakland, has been considered in these studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fern, for your comment. We appreciate it. I don't see any other hands or comments in the chat box, but we plan to be here through the conclusion of the meeting. We will be here till 8 p.m. And it looks like we're competing with a certain game, which is probably why. We don't have more comments. But yeah. So we'll stay on. I'll go off. I will go on mute and turn off my camera for now. For those of you that are still here, we do want to remind you, and I believe Ms. Maloney wrote that in the chat box, is that comments, we strongly consider that encourage you to submit your comment in writing, either via email or by mail, to the Oakland Harbor Turning Basins study at usace.army.mil. And so on the screen, you can see the email address. There are several of us monitoring that, so we'll make sure that your comments are recorded. The documents are also at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers website. There's another slide that has that. And there's a link to it as well on the Port of Oakland's website. The other thing I wanted to emphasize is the fact that this is a re-release, and just kind of remind folks that are still here that Jessica in her presentation highlighted the fact that we have on page 6 of the executive summary, you can find all the areas or the sections that changed in the revised or the re-release of the draft document. The other thing I'd like to share with you is that the PowerPoint presentation will be available on the Corps of Engineers website, and a link will be provided on the Port's website as well, as this is a partnership between the two agencies. And then lastly, for anyone who prefers to look at documents in hard copy format, Jessica also had in the PowerPoint presentation, and you can see it on the two websites, the Corps and the Port's website, the locations where you can visit a library near you and look at a hard copy document. So that's all I have for now. Again, we appreciate your time, your comments, your thoughtfulness. Super helpful. All right. So at this time, thank you, Mr. Cleveland. At this time, we're going to just, I'm going to go off on mute, and I'm going to turn off my camera. And we'll be around. We don't want to go away.
In the meantime, we'll fill up the blank space with some music until I can see any raised hands and alert the team here or that we have a public comment in the queue. Okay?
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
For anyone that just joined us, the line is still open if you'd like to make a comment to be recorded. We're keeping the line open till 8 p.m. Thank you. If you'd like to make a comment, you can raise your hand or you can submit a comment in the chat box. Thank you very much.
We have one person in the queue with who has raised their hand. I don't see it anymore. Apologies. It's here.
Oh, thank you, Miss Laura.
Let's see. I don't see that person anymore, or I don't see the hand. Not sure who it was in the who has logged in. If you were trying to make a public comment, could you let us know by raising your hand and we will turn your mic on? I don't see it.
If anyone joined us in the last few minutes and would like to make a comment, raise your hand or put your comment in the chat box. Let us know how we can help you make your comment. Thank you. I see Miss Margaret. Miss Margaret Gordon has joined us. Miss Margaret, would you like to make a comment? The line is still open. We can unmute your microphone.
Hello?
Hi, Miss Margaret.
Yes, I can't get into the overall meeting.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The meeting was recorded, so we do have it. And if the comment period is still open, if you wanted to make a comment.
I thought the meeting was from 6 to 8 o'clock.
Yes, the meeting was started at 6 p.m. And at 7 p.m. we didn't have any more comments, any more attendees trying to make a comment. So our team, both the core and the port, are keeping the line open from 7 to 8 p.m. If anyone wants to make a comment or has a question, we're still, the line's still open.
All right, thank you.
So we'll leave if you want us to make a comment, your microphone is open. We're ready to listen.
I'll write something in.
Okay. Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you, Miss Margaret.
Yes.
Miss Margaret, I see that you put a comment in the chat box. Would you like me to read it out for you, or would you like to read it yourself?
No, I don't need for you to read it out to me.
Okay. And then the second thing that I wanted to highlight is that the PowerPoint is going to be available. There was a little short PowerPoint where we presented some of the highlights of what has changed from the previous draft to the re-release.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And then the webinar is also recorded, so you'll be able to watch it, even though you might have missed part of it. So it will be available for
you
to view. Thank you.
Investigators also searched this area in Colorado Hills where an acquaintance or possibly former boyfriend of Hoffner's had lived. Now investigators are looking again decades later.
Well, we have about, for anyone that's still around, we have about 5 minutes left to submit comments. Of course, we strongly encourage you to submit written comments via through email to Mr. Eric Jolliffe at Oakland Harbor Turning Basin Study at usace.army.mil, or in writing via regular email to Mr. Eric Jolliffe at the address shown on the screen, which is 450 Golden Gate Avenue, 4th floor, San Francisco, California 94102. And if you have any problems or any issues trying to submit your comments, please reach out at that email address, Oakland Harbor Turning Basin Study at usace.army.mil, and let us know if you need any assistance in making sure that your comments are submitted for the record. So we have a few minutes left. We have about 3 minutes left. I see that there's still a few comments being submitted on the chat box. We appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and take these last couple of minutes to thank the team for being on here till the end of the call. I really appreciate you taking the time to stay on through the completion of this public meeting. Really appreciate your time. And if there are no more comments, we're going to be closing out in about 2 minutes. Want to remind you that, and I don't know if Justin, if you can go back to the slide that has the email address plus the two, the port and the Corps' website, if you don't mind. Yep, that one. So just a reminder that the comment period closes on 12 June 2023. There are 2 QR codes there, one for the port and one for the Corps. You can find all the documents on the Corps of Engineers website as listed there. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. On how to submit comments. Whatever we can do to help.
How it works.
Ms. Margaret, did you have something else to add before we close out? Okay. Well, Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, for taking the time to submit comments, to raise your hand and ask questions. We still have the slide up on the screen to show you how you can submit comments, or how to reach out if you have questions and need assistance submitting comments. We're happy to help. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Don't forget, the presentation will be available on the website as well as the recording. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.